All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ Podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope you don't do any damage. This is a Kiss-related podcast by the board for the board. We hope that you enjoy. Welcome to episode 165 of the KissFAQ Podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill, admin on the FAQ message board. And today I am joined by St. Louis Kiss, Lonnie, and the voice of reason, 69th Blizzard, Ken. Gentlemen, good as always to get to hang out and have a virtual beer. This is not virtual, this is real. With both of you. And sit and talk a little bit about Kiss. Actually, Lonnie, I have a fridge in my office too, and you know what it's got in it? It's got freaking pomegranate juice, milk, and tea. And
I got a Keurig in here for my coffee. I don't have any beer in here. So I need to remedy that in the future.
No beer at work. That's the one way to end out of work very quickly.
Keurig that does beers. That's it.
All right, Ken, I've got to ask you.
Yeah.
Inquiring minds want to know, what is the status on your vault? With Las Vegas coming up this weekend, I guess you could pretty much go postal and drive to Vegas and take a baseball bat.
Put your finger in somebody's chest.
Well, fortunately, I'm not going to have to do that because I did get a notice today that I'm getting a shipment tomorrow, a very big package tomorrow. Big, heavy package. So I think after me pestering almost daily, and everything kept being delayed for getting the vault, it's finally arriving. So it should arrive tomorrow. I still cross my fingers, even though it's there and I have a tracking number and that sort of thing. So crossing fingers.
Right, so you've already signed up for the alerts for that tracking number, right? And you're dreading the exception coming through. An exception due to snowy weather.
Oh yeah. In
Julian. Where's it shipping from? Is it coming from?
Well, actually, it was shipping from Hollywood or down there, Southern California. So weather's good. So I'm not worried about the truck getting stuck in snow, at least. So if that happens, Julian, we'll be able to do another show, one of our podcasts here, on a review of the music. I'm going to have to dig in pretty hard over the weekend and start going through it all.
Well, here's the problem with doing that show. Lonnie, you don't have a vault.
I do not.
When do you get your vault?
Well, you could say,
or you're allowed to get a vault.
When am I getting my vault? When am I getting my vault would also be, when are you getting your divorce? So,
same day.
Right, same day. Turns out, same day. So, yeah, I am not getting a vault. I am not getting one. And saying anything else would not be wise.
Yeah, so there you go. Sometimes things are better left unsaid. Let me move on to something that does actually tie in with Ken's question. And yes, we are going to want to do a kind of, I guess, a best of the vault, and that is going to be an episode where I say we pick our 15 favorite songs off the vault and put together a best of the vault CD that Gene would sell online to fans for a normal price, and that would just be one way of doing a highlight of the best of the material for each of us off the vault. But obviously not all the guys on the KissFAQ podcast have one. Next week's episode is actually with Nigel, who did the Miami Vault experience, so he's a possibility if schedules work out. But if you out there in listening land want to hop on a episode of the KissFAQ podcast with Ken and me, and you've purchased the Vault and you want to do your 15 favorite Vault tracks and be a part of that, why not? I say if you're on the board, if you're on Facebook and your game, you've got video, you've got Skype that marginally behaves, then why not? Let's get some fresh faces on here so that we're all kind of in the vault boat together and can do that kind of episode. So reach out to me on the FAQ or email. I'm not hidden. Everyone knows my email address, or on Facebook, and I'll let you know what time we kind of look to record, and we'll see what we can do with that. All right, so today's news actually is guests have been announced for the for the Indie Kiss Expo. Yeah, so Keith Leroux posted last week that he's got Ace Frehley, Eric Singer, Bruce Kulick, Bob Kulick, Brent Fitz, Todd Kearns, Michael James Jackson confirmed for Indianapolis, May the 12th and 13th. Or is it the 13th and 14th? It's Mother's Day weekend. It's a 2-day event. He also says that he's still working on additional guests with details to come soon. And they've already got a block of rooms at the Wyndham Indianapolis West, which is, I guess, the hotel that they usually use. I have a dealer table set up. I'm going to be there. I can't wait. It is many, many years. Oh, no, I'm not going to go into New York Groove. It's been a long time since I went to Indy, and it really was the expo of choice back in the day. I went to 2 of the first 3 that they did announce their 20th anniversary, so I can't wait for that. I'm excited. The guest list looks sick. The guest list looks like it's got a shitload of possibilities, and who knows who else is going to get announced for that, because it sounds like the indie crew are swinging big. That's just from the people they've already announced. So I will be there. I'm going to do another edition of On Tour with a custom cover just for that event. Can't wait. So hopefully I get to meet you. Bring in your books if you want them signed. Happy to do so. And I'll have a couple of titles just for that event. All right. Any other news that I've skipped over? Oh, yeah, Podcast Wars. Let's have a... No, fuck off. We're the fans, they're the band. We're just a bunch of people who get together and talk about Kiss. One thing I've kind of been... I had a nice shout-out from Aaron Camaro. Aaron, thank you so much for the nice things you said in episode 310 of Decibel Geek Podcast,
I heard that.
where you presented your side. 3 sides have given their side. You know what? I was on the other side of the room, and I said it in a post online. I was giggling like a schoolgirl during Vinny's session. The music, everything that he was saying, I was just like SpongeBob, all rainbow-eyed. He's up on stage. He's like going way into more depth. I didn't notice anything, but again, I was on the other side of the room. And you know what? Again, I don't want to get into inter-podcast rivalries, because everyone who does a podcast, whether or not I listen to them or like them, is irrelevant. They are people who are putting time and effort into, entertainment that's free for everyone else. Or they're like me, putting time and effort into hanging out with other guys who just want to talk about Kiss and shit, because my wife will not talk to me about Kiss other than, when are you burning that shit, you loser. That's as far as our conversations go at home about Kiss. So podcasts, they're all good. You don't have to listen to them all.
Julian, I'm on the side, the 4th side. That's the side I'm going to go on.
The side of reason.
Exactly.
There you go.
Very good.
So what is that side, Ken?
Well, it's the civil and right-minded side.
Let's just all try and respect each other. And, sometimes let the shit slide. It doesn't have to become a drama point. Is I think what I'm saying. It's sad. I don't want to see. There's a lot of people out there who do podcasts who I do respect a tremendous amount. And when we're talking about people who we respect a tremendous amount, let's think of Ken Mills, who's been under the weather, has been in, receiving medical care, and that's the kind of shit that matters to me. That's the good side of podcasting, someone who really has given so much to the community and doesn't ask for much. Occasionally promote something of interest to everyone, but that's the side of podcasting that matters. So for everyone who wants to have a debate about podcasts, you suck, you don't suck, this guy's great, this guy's a tool. I can say that because obviously I was given a nickname by one of the band members of the FAQ, Julian. So I proudly have
Julian.
That. Julian. Yeah, go figure. Just forget about all that shit and listen to who you want to and ignore the static. All right.
Here you go.
Should we talk some Kiss? And we don't really have any proper topic thought out for this week. It's more of a kind of relaxed look at some of the stuff that's going on. We've got some, I like the topic of with all the summer tours getting announced. Is Kiss deliberately taking it easy, do you think? to hop on the Paul Simon bandwagon and start announcing that, like Paul Simon, like Elton John, who else
Elton John, yeah.
Ozzy again.
Well, yeah, who believes Ozzy?
No, Ozzy's been on so many farewell tours he lost count. But here, Ozzy, Elton John, Leonard Skinner. So a lot of there's several quote unquote farewell tours taking place this summer. So what's Kiss's game plan?
Yeah, I'm still holding out hope for something, maybe late in the year, later part of the year, or late summer, possible. Because normally, from what I remember, my Kiss Army membership usually like expires in March, and always around that, or right close to March or at the beginning of March, that's when lots of times they would announce a tour of some sort. So I'm kind of wondering if we're going to get anything. I guess if I don't hear anything at that point, then they're probably not going to do anything extra. But there's still a possibility that they could do something later in the year. I'm hoping.
The problem is most of the summer tour packages are starting to get announced now.
Sure.
Def Leppard's put theirs out. Who did they team up with this year?
Journey.
And isn't it Ann Wilson, as well is the third party on one of the packages. Cheap Trick and Poison. Well, I would take Poison to miss Poison to see Cheap Trick, if you take my meaning.
Whitesnake and Foreigner are going to play together also.
That's a shame.
You know. I don't know. I'm not going for the package. I'm going for the big guns. So I'm seeing U2, and then I'm going to see Electric Light Orchestra.
No.
So ELO is the one that I really want to see. I mean, that's the one I picked to go to. So,
but does Kiss actually, can they tour without a package these days? Because their last few tours have really been reliant. I mean, Lonnie, what do you think? Do they need a package? And if they are taking it easy, regardless, should they be thinking about their final hurrah having a pretty strong secondary pull?
I really think they do need a package. If you look back at the history of what they've done over the last several U.S. tours. Obviously, the last major tour and think about this. The last major tour they did of the United States it's going to be 4 years ago, major market tour of the United States, let's say that, was in 2014, where they teamed up with Def Leppard. But prior to that, 2012, wow. Motley Crue. Now you can say, well, they did tour 2016 without a big supporting act, yeah, but was also to smaller arenas in secondary markets. And okay, but this is Kiss. We always talk about we're going to show them how the big boys do it. Well, did the big boys play in Allentown, Pennsylvania, or they play in Philadelphia? So if you hear and you keep going back, well, okay, summer of 10 that they toured, no major supporting act. 09, Buck Cherry, not a really major supporting act. But the last two times, and then you can keep going back, and now I know we're more than a decade back then if we keep going. 04 Poison, 03 Aerosmith. But okay, well, at this point too, Kiss is biding their time. Then they haven't toured the United States properly for a reason, thinking that well, if we wait a while, maybe it'll be like 09 again, where we come out and we can play major markets and major arenas and not have to have a major act behind us after not flooding the market year in and year out for several years in a row. It's kind of like they've kind of taken that step back, like maybe they're looking for another big touring opportunity like they had in 09.
45th anniversary tour, or a kiss and say goodbye tour, like 2019, something like that.
I can very well see a Kiss 2019, Kiss it goodbye, something like that.
I mean, do you think now with the amount of acts and bands that are really starting to put up their hands and say we just can't do this anymore, it's time to come off the road? it's been an avalanche of names that for most of us have formed the soundtracks to our lives for the last 50 years in many cases. Do you think we're finally reaching the point where it's time for Kiss to think about that card? And having seen Gene perform recently, he still sounds great, he looks great, but watching him in Edmonton, it looked like hard work, even without the however many pounds of demon armor and all the rigmarole that it takes on a daily or bi-daily basis to go through the ritual and routine of putting on the makeup, the war paint, as he likes to call it, doing the meet and greets, doing this, doing that, getting up on stage. And the set has shortened. We're back down to 70s length sets now instead of, say, the 90s, the Ultimate Era, in terms of the amount of material that was performed. Paul, obviously, is the elephant in the room in terms of his decline, even though he's physically it's still an extremely energetic and entertaining and engaged frontman. There's no way of denying that there aren't challenges that he faces. Eric and Tommy, I still think Eric totally holds it down in the back just fine. Tommy is still the same Tommy that he was in 2003, 2004. He's a better Tommy than 2003 and 2004.
Well, yeah.
But it's not about those two guys. When you talk about Kiss is Simmons and Stanley, or Stanley and Simmons, depending on how you want to go with that. So, do you think they're trying to stay out of the limelight? Do you think maybe some of Gene's kind of negative press issues have made them go a little bit more quiet? Gene doesn't seem to be pushing the vault as hard now as he was. Obviously getting banned from Fox probably didn't help, but he's not showing up on a tremendous amount of diverse and different outlets. I mean, I'm really shocked he hasn't been on Eddie Trunk, because regardless of the Paul situation, I don't see why Gene would not say, "Hey, Paul, I need to push my product. I need to, get every avenue possible, because these podcast guys, they're too busy fighting with each other to really promote my stuff."
Well, he had the initial push at the beginning, of course. So he was going on all kinds of networks and major networks even, and then some local news shows of areas where he was going to pop up. I think I'm guessing he's probably going to show up like at a news channel in Denver, or whatever, a morning talk show in Denver, to try to promote that new announced show, Vault show there, right?
Yep, Denver and Seattle.
And Seattle, yeah. And Seattle. So I'm guessing they're going to do that. Just depending on how sales are going, I guess, of the vaults for those locations. But it seems to be doing better based on the more vault experiences happen, more people are starting to jump on board, I think, to take that leap and purchase a vault.
Yeah, that was one of the things that came across when I spoke with Nigel at the weekend, and obviously we're out of sync now in terms of where you're listening to these shows and when we're recording them. But Nigel went to Miami, and again, that show, I don't doubt his take on the event and how it was different from our experience in Los Angeles. Mark Cicchini's experience, which was heavily heavily promoted by Three Sides, obviously as part of their show, and not only that, but his interview with Gene. And then this weekend coming up, you've got Las Vegas. So there's more and more experiences. Dr. Fox review of his vault experience in Miami. I mean, there's a lot of podcasters doing it, but again, mainstream media, but then again, who in the mainstream wants to spend $2,000 on a vault? So.
I don't know.
So what do you see them doing for the rest of the year? Is it just going to be strictly Gene Simmons vault experiences, maybe a few solo shows here and there, then the cruise? Because I don't see them having much time to organize anything.
They have a few shows lined up in Europe, Spain, and Portugal, I guess, that they're doing, which is really odd that they're going to truck that all the way over there to Europe for just a handful of shows. But I guess with the stage that they've used the last couple of years, it's really not anything special. It's not like they're bringing the spider or something like that over there. It's just a basic stage that they've been using the last few years. So I see them doing that, obviously, and I see them coming back here. And, I think they'll do a couple of one-offs in the United States like they've done over the years when they're not doing a major touring act. They'll still do maybe a festival or two like they did that festival in Chicago last year.
Casino.
Maybe, or a casino or just a random show or two on the East Coast. I can see them doing something like that and doing the cruise and everything really revolving around Gene's set up vault schedule that's basically set up throughout the year.
What if they do another Las Vegas run, like they did
another residency?
Residency, yeah. It's possible, Again, that would probably be later in the year. Otherwise, I hear noise. But anyway,
Ken, look out! Look out your window and tell me how hot it is in Northern California this week.
It's warm. It's nice.
It's 70. It's 78 degrees here in San Francisco today. Yeah, my windows are open.
We don't have that problem here.
One other thing is, I guess there's a recent interview, and still Paul is still touting the, Kiss can go on without me kind of
I saw that
thing, and
sorry, Paul. No.
Yeah, so I don't think so, but they may try, or they may think about it, and then no, it's like these guys are not going to live up to the original. It probably will fall flat,
Yeah, because then you become Menudo.
Menudo.
Completely. I'm sorry. On one of the threads discussing Paul's, latest, I can see a Kiss without myself in it. Well, Paul, time to get some glasses, buddy, because you're the heart and soul of Kiss, and for many people, they say they can see Kiss without Gene Simmons because they've seen guys like Spiro who really look a convincing Gene. Well, I've heard a lot of guys who sound like a convincing Gene and Cookie Monster mode vocally. I've never heard a convincing Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley has a gift and a rapport built on decades of decibels. Oh shit! There we go. Decades of experience.
Decibels.
No, Kiss.
We're on a podcast.
Yeah, Kiss 40. That was the subtitle of that release, and I was actually listening to it today.
That's right.
That's the only reason I remember that. But Paul Stanley is so much more than just a name and a makeup design. That the charisma that comes through of what he does on stage, he says, I can see a Kiss without me. I'm like, no, you fucking can't.
No, you're kidding yourself. Paul Stanley's kidding himself. He thinks he can see a Kiss without him. I mean, he's not only is he Paul Stanley, but he's the major decision maker of the band. I mean, all things go through Paul Stanley. So. Everything goes through Paul. Nothing happens without Paul Stanley's seal of approval. Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons may be the face of Kiss as far as television. Well, before the whole Fox ordeal, anyway. But Paul Stanley is the major decision maker. He's the ultimate boss, in my opinion, of Kiss, and I don't see how a Kiss can continue without Paul Stanley. I mean, and he's been the ultimate decision maker for how many of the 45 years has Paul Stanley been the guy? So
for probably since the 80s, to a degree, obviously, but
since the makeup came off, maybe before that.
Somewhere, yeah, the control switched totally over to him. I think. It may have happened around 80s, of course, but then he just kept that control, I think, all the way up to the reunion
and beyond.
And beyond, I think. I don't think it has wavered. I think Gene has kind of just gone along with it. I'm sure he has his input and everything, and I guess he could say no to something, but I think to a degree, Paul is the final word.
So that being said, how can Kiss go on without Paul Stanley?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to have a clone. Seriously, you'd have to have a clone to replace him. Sometimes there is out there a double of yourself, I guess they say, somewhere in the world. But it's almost like, I don't know. It's like talk about Journey with that guy. I can't remember, Arnell, who replaced Steve Perry. The guy sounds just like Steve Perry. Sure, he doesn't look the same as Steve Perry, but he does a pretty good, darn good job out there. So, from that standpoint, I can almost. That's the only thing. He'd have to sound just like Paul, really, and have the charisma like you were talking about, for it to work.
Yeah, because it's not just the charisma; it's the full package of Paul Stanley. There's how he holds himself. Just his body language on stage, his body language in interviews, the look. Yeah, he's got that look he'll give someone. So it just transcends the voice. But then again, I've never heard out there. If you've heard someone who sounds like a convincing Paul Stanley clone, send us some YouTube clips, because I would love to hear someone and see how close to my ear or what I see in my head when I listen to their stuff and see if they really do, or whether they stand half a chance of passing that test, as far as I'm concerned. But again, no one ever has come close.
No. I mean, even if they talked about doing that, I know that the old, idol kind of thing. Even if you brought a whole bunch of people in, you still probably wouldn't find a guy that sounded like him.
I think it would make for a very entertaining, probably Netflix or
It'd be entertaining
series,
for sure.
Finding Paul Stanley or finding Starchild. Going
through Starchild,
going through the training and camp, and Paul Stanley, here's how I warm up, here's what I do, and every episode he sets them a song that they have to perform.
Yeah.
In front of the baying hordes of Kiss fans, armed with
makeup,
armed with whatever, Okay, this week, guys, you're going to do Heaven's on Fire, including the intro.
Yeah. Would you have them all in makeup? Would all the Paul Stanleys have to come out in makeup and costume?
Totally, sure. Because sometimes
you have to learn how to do the makeup.
It's the look.
You really screw up the makeup, man. It'd be almost funny if, like, look at that guy. That guy really screwed the star up. We put an extra star on, or whatever.
You put on the wrong eye.
Wrong eye, right? He was looking at the mirror.
Hey,
that old trick.
It does not have 8.
We've all seen it. We've all seen it happen.
That's true.
No, but seriously, you would have to have them do the makeup, because there are some people whose faces
just doesn't fit it. Sure.
You put a star on me, I'm going to look like an idiot. Well, I look like an idiot anyway, but there you go. It's just not going to work on some people. Their hair, everything about them they have to have the right physique.
Sure.
They can't have a beer belly and a hairnet shirt on and sound like Archie Bunker rolling out of bed to.
Bunker.
Yeah.
Edith.
But they also, it's not just singing voice, because a lot of vocalists can imitate someone else reasonably well. They've got to be able to do the raps. So that would be a great test. That would be actually a hilarious test. You have to replicate my rap from Alive or Alive 2.
Yeah. About cold gin.
Cold gin rap.
Orange juice and vodka and orange juice.
One of the tests.
The Love Gun rap from Animalize tour.
Oh no.
the Michael Jackson.
Right.
Yes, the Michael Jackson.
Or 100,000 Years rock and roll preacher rap.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Along with the lasso microphone thing. You'd have half the guys swinging it, knocking themselves out.
Knocking themselves in the head or losing it to the
camera. Yeah.
Was it Spinal Tap where they did the swing and it went out in the audience and hit someone in the head? Or, there was some movie that. Oh, it was Rockstar.
Yeah, Rockstar.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
So I think the end of that point is that it's a hell of a lot harder to be Paul Stanley than maybe it looks. You know, you should probably start yourself at Vince Neil and work your way up from there.
Yeah, you could just ask your friend John, right?
Jonathan?
He's done. Yes.
He does a pretty good Paul Stanley, but does he do a Paul Stanley level Paul Stanley? I don't know. You'd have to ask Jonathan how close he thinks he gets to Paul. He certainly gets the energy, the attitude, and the
It's got the energy. Yeah.
The total love for the band and the music. So, for any of the guys in tribute bands, if they can, do it with respect, it goes a long way towards being, legitimate for what they're paying tribute to. All right, you raised an interesting question. Who rules Kiss? And, what years was ruled by who? Let's go through some of these years. Paul Stanley has owned the band pretty much since Sonic Boom. Would that be fair to say that, obviously he said I was not going to make an album unless I had full control.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
But before that, in the period, Psycho Circus, who owned Kiss at that point, which one of those two personalities held sway, do you think?
I'd still say Paul.
Yeah. I at Psycho Circus era, I'd say probably Paul. More so than Gene. I think Gene would have somehow tried to make it work to get all four of them in the studio to record it, the album. The same way you see him with Ace today, right? He gets on pretty well with Ace, and I don't think Paul will get on the same way with Ace as much as Gene does. So from that standpoint, I'm thinking, it's still Paul at Psycho Circus time.
Paul shows up for Ace's solo video, Fire and Water, and participates in that. And has Gene done anything that's that much bigger than performing in a music video with Ace?
Well, he sat down and wrote a couple of songs with Ace. We know that. Ace has showed up didn't Gene show up at Ace's show when he was down in L.A.? Or vice versa. And now with the Vault thing, Ace showing up at L.A. and Miami. And maybe more. I just think Gene has a better connection with Ace than Paul does.
All right, so let's go back from Psycho Circus into Unplugged. Who do you think owned the band during that era? Think of some of those set lists.
At that time, I would say Gene, because Gene really came up with the idea of the Kiss convention tour and selling the tickets for $100 a piece and putting on his very own Kiss convention. I would say Gene was calling the shots at that point, at least as far as the tour goes and as far as that small era goes. I would definitely say it was Gene for that time frame.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. And because the other thing is, he was probably the instigator for raiding that convention, right, to get some of their costume stuff back. I'm guessing he was probably the main guy, because he's always was out there to, either cease and desist kind of stuff and whatnot.
See, I totally think that was more Paul.
Really?
You do?
Oh, absolutely. That's just one of those things. I think Gene was interested, but I think Gene was always more interested in hearing the sound of his own voice talking about all these sorts of things. Paul was actually paying attention to some of the shit going on in the background and knowing exactly who to target, when, and how to make the biggest possible statement. So that kind of, to me, speaks more of Paul's underlying laser focus of, I'm going to get you suckers, and certainly did. And then Gene actually had an idea of what to do with all that shit. Oh, okay, let's take the middleman out of it. Hey, instead of 30 cents on the dollar, if we do it ourselves, we can make 60 cents on the dollar. And if we take a loss, it's tax deductible. That's kind of how I see
Right.
that relationship working. Gene's, I think,
so
got a better mind.
it could have been about 50-50 then, if from your point of view. At that time.
But artistically, I think it was Gene who was more interested in playing some of those things. There was a lot. Well, I don't know. We'd have to do a real analysis of the Unplugged.
Of those set lists.
Yeah, but it feels like there was more that Gene was kind of willing to, we could remember a bass riff here, remember lyrics here, and Paul's just like, I don't remember. Paul wrote so much shit over the years, whereas Gene wrote a lot of shit. Take the difference in the enunciation of that word there, that Gene remembered a lot more because so much was based on the same kind of ideas for him that it was easier for him to recall than it was Paul's. He either performed it every day or forgot about it because it didn't count. It wasn't something that the fans considered worthy, so Paul didn't consider it worthy. Whereas Gene's like, oh, it's just music. I remember this. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you think about some of the set lists though, with like Going Blind and See You Tonight and some of those other rare Gene songs that I think Gene...
World Without Heroes, he did that back
then. It's another good one. So I think there's a fair point in that with some of those set lists that were pretty deep. I think pretty deep in Gene cuts anyway. Sure, Paul Stanley sang his fair share of songs, but I think the Gene songs were much deeper than the Paul Stanley sung songs.
Yeah, Paul Stanley had the opportunity in 1989 to show his deep catalog, and
solo tour.
His solo tour was basically, the deep cuts were his solo songs. Other than that, I Stole Your Love and Communication, or what was it? Yeah, Communication Breakdown.
Communication Breakdown.
So, all right, so let's take a step back. Revenge. Who is the controlling force there, Lonnie?
I would say Gene, actually, again. It's a darker album, and I see Gene more in control. Actually, I think maybe the fair answer is maybe for the album itself. For the album itself, it's Bob Ezrin.
I agree.
It isn't real for the album itself. Maybe for that era, maybe it's Paul for the era, but for the album itself, I would say Bob Ezrin, because look at how different those albums were leading up to Revenge, and then you bring in a producer like Bob, and you bring in Vinnie Vincent to help write some songs, but Bob was able to harness something out of that band and get something that they hadn't been able to produce in the 80s for that album. So I'd say the driving force at that particular time is definitely Bob Ezrin. Sorry, Mark, you're not here.
Who called Vinny first? Was it Gene?
Julian?
I believe Vinny bumped into Gene at NAMM.
Ah, that's it. So that's where, because you just heard the stories, right? About that.
Yeah,
at the convention.
Yeah, but I don't pay that close attention, unfortunately. That's what I'm still
had a few beers in him too.
No, I'm waiting for someone to come on, Kiss fans. No one's transcribed those interviews yet. I'm like, am I going to have to do this myself? Because when I go back and take notes longhand, I then look down at my handwriting, and because I type all the time, I can't read it. So it becomes like an endless circle of going back. So, but I think he said that they reconnected at NAMM, and then he called Vinny, and so I think it was Gene.
It was Gene. So hey, Gene, and I could see that because what I've seen in Paul's book regarding Vinny, I can't see him reaching out to Vinny.
I could see Vinny coming up to Paul at NAMM saying, "Hi, Paul, it's me, Vinny," and him looking the other way, and
there goes me and Mr. Mustard walks away.
Yeah, to that kind of extent. So, who do I think rules Kiss during Revenge? Paul Stanley.
Really?
I don't think you get Bob Ezrin back in without Paul Stanley saying yes. I don't think you get Unholy as the lead-off single without Paul Stanley saying yes. I don't think you get Vinnie Vincent back in the picture without Vinny writing with Paul Stanley successfully. No matter how much it all seems geared towards Gene and Gene's image, and it's kind of like the album. Well, Gene finally looks cool. Gene sounds good. Talk me down, voice of reason.
I don't know.
Let me say this. Let me say this real quick. If Bob Ezrin wasn't producing that album and Paul Stanley was producing that album, Gene does not get the lead off single.
Correct.
Okay, fine. I completely agree with that. But I think if Paul Stanley doesn't want Bob Ezrin doesn't produce that album. I think if Paul Stanley ultimately doesn't give his vote of approval to Gene as saying, okay, let's try this one your way. I've just done Asylum. I've been responsible for Crazy Nights. I apologize for Let's Put the X in Sex. We'll never talk that again. Hot in the Shade is both of us just doing as little as possible to put out product. Okay, let's try it your way. You're finally looking halfway presentable now, Gene. It's only taken you 9 years since the makeup came off. No, I don't see Paul ceding anything ever, willingly.
Well, they had the trial song, right?
God Gave Rock and Roll
to see what. Yes, God Gave Rock and Roll to You as the trial song to see if it would still work. I mean, who you think Paul contacted Bob Ezrin on that, or?
No, that came through the movie studio. Wanted a Kiss song.
They were approached,
and they wanted a Kiss song produced by Bob Ezrin. So that was kind of like, here, have some money, but you can only have this pile of green if you do. Okay. So they were obviously both of them.
And at that point, they take it.
Yeah. Come on. After the Hot in the Shade album tanks, essentially, even with Forever being a big hit, it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't a successful album. It was a very successful tour. Two different things, and maybe it's a roll of the dice. But I think Paul would have had conditions attached to that, and said, okay, if it works, if that God Gave Rock and Roll to You single is successful, then we'll give him a chance. Gene is much more likely to be able to work with people. His attitude towards it is less about the personality side of things, of you slighted me, you disagreed with me. He's more pragmatic in that sense, that I see him saying, well, let's give it a try. He seems a little bit more open than Paul remembering, you didn't like that solo, or you didn't like my song, bitch. That's how I perceive them, and I don't know either of them on a personal level or have been in a studio with them. So that's just how I perceive their kind of like their personality quirks coming through. So I totally get it, but I still think Paul was the ultimate one to say, okay, we'll give Ezrin a try, and if he fucks it up again, then there would have been no revenge.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they had the success with God Gave Rock and Roll to You. So I don't know. I still think Gene had more of a control, or maybe their manager
50-50.
Maybe it was 50-50. Maybe their manager at the time too was because I've heard interviews with Larry saying that, you know what, I want the Demon as a lead off, with the lead off single and the first song on the album. Now, whether that really happened, whether he's the one who said that, I don't know. But Larry, I've definitely heard Larry saying that. Maybe Larry had a lot of influence on him at that point too, after the success that they had on the Hot in the Shade tour, where he was, kind of calling how they were looking and kind of getting them back to looking like a decent looking band and not just ridiculous. So I think Larry had some influence on him at the time too, I think.
All right, so go listen to the Excellent Three Sides interview with Larry, right? Because they did quite.
They did. It's a great interview.
Yeah, and I can't remember the details off the top of my head on that one, so go check that one out, and that's probably your answer of who owns Kiss During Revenge. May not even be Gene or Paul, maybe Larry, or Mo or Curly. Okay, let's go back. We're gonna skip Smashes because that's just deniable. Hot in the Shade, who owns that? And obviously Smashes comes before that, but I'm going to say Paul Stanley's still on that.
Paul.
It's going to get real Paul.
I'll have to agree.
Yeah, it gets very Paul here for a while. Smashes is obviously Paul because, if he was the only one who could be bothered. Which is a shame because, Ken, as you're going to find out when you listen to The Vault, Gene was generating quite a lot of good stuff that could easily have been worked up for, one song from each of them on smashes instead of those dreadful.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to listening to, because I think even though Gene was kind of out doing his movie thing and not totally dedicated, except when he was on the touring, I think Paul, as his way of getting back at him, is my theory is that he poo-pooed a lot of Gene Simmons' better material. So Paul would have the better material than Gene on those. His revenge,
Yeah, just wait till you hear it, and then you'll completely understand why that really seems to be the case. Because, I don't want to talk too much about the vault material, but stuff like
we'll get to that. When we do that episode. Yeah,
No Mercy, which was talked about in the 87-89 period. Some of the other stuff, he totally.
I mean, imagine, and we'll get to that when we do that review. But imagine there's a very good possibility their albums could have been a lot better overall.
Yeah, without a doubt. But we'll cover that some other time.
Yeah. For episodes I can't participate.
No, Lonnie, you're just gonna have to listen to one of our episodes that we
got a birthday coming up, Lonnie, or something.
Not that much of a milestone.
I don't get that much for my birthday, hotshot.
Next 10 Christmases.
Forget it. You have to remember that Lonnie did drag Becky to the Rock and Pod Expo last year. So
and Atlanta.
So
I can't complain too much.
Say no more. All right. Crazy Nights. Obviously, Paul.
Yeah. No debate.
Yeah.
There's no debate.
I have no debate on
Where's
that.
Gene holding up his thong on the back of the album? I mean, it's all Paul Stanley.
I don't think Gene wanted that producer. I would say he didn't want the Ron Nevison.
No.
Where Paul, they waited for him
to
become available.
They did. And just going off on a quick Crazy Nights tangent, obviously I've continued to work on interviews for the 30th anniversary of Crazy Nights, which is, of course, Danger Zone. And I've just added a new interview this week to the website, which is kissdangerzone.com. And it's with the only credited backing vocalist on that album, Tom Kelly. If you don't know who he is, I did quite a shitload of research actually going into that interview. I don't usually have to do a ton, but Ken, the amount of Dan Fogelberg, which is not in my wheelhouse whatsoever, worked with him, and Fool's Gold, Madonna. He co-wrote Like a Virgin.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he sang the original demo to that, and it was picked up by Michael Austin, the son of Mo Austin, who anyone who knows anything about Van Halen knows who Mo is. So it's a really kick-ass interview.
Oh yeah.
It's a little light on the Kiss side, so if you're going in there thinking that he's going to be sitting down recalling every moment with working with Paul Stanley on the vocals, no, it's very general in those terms. Much more interesting in terms of heart, and they recorded the original version of Alone, which was Heart's big breakout number one.
Oh yeah.
So that's just an aside, but getting back to
interesting.
The Crazy Nights era. I mean, it's obviously Paul, and
Paul.
Again, that's going to be a discussion that we have after you've listened to the Vols, because a lot of Gene's contributions that are shot down are on there, and they leave you scratching your head, going, "What could have been? Maybe if My Way was replaced with Dial L for Love, or You're Always This Hot." Or Show Mercy, or No Mercy. I can't remember what it is, but it was mentioned around the time in interviews. That it was so obviously Paul, but then again, Gene was so obviously absent. He's off there with Black and Blue. He's off there with EZO. He's out there with Keel. He's doing all these fucking awful movies. Trick and Treat, Wanted Dead or Alive,
Red Surf.
Yeah. Red Surf. What's that one with John Stamos and Vanity, where he plays the
Never Too Young to Die.
Never Too Young to Die.
So that's all the Crazy Nights era. Those are all reason enough to punish Gene mercilessly.
Never gonna watch it again.
And then for him to have had the audacity to say that he'd taken lessons for 2 years for acting, and then to go in all those shit movies. So no, I don't like Gene Simmons' acting career, and I will never pretend otherwise. But
yeah.
All right, go back to Asylum.
Go back.
Paul Stanley again, right?
Paul Stanley again.
Yeah.
Come on.
But interesting on that one where it said, isn't that the album that says produced by Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
It doesn't mean it's
I'm just saying he's more.
Doesn't mean it's
he's that much more involved, but yeah, I think it's still
Paul.
Still the Paul Stanley album.
Yeah, and I mean it's Paul. I mean the single. I mean
controlling it.
All the singles are Paul. Even I mean it's totally Paul Stanley.
There's no single.
It's only one.
Gene Simmons.
There's only one single on that album. It's Tears Are Falling. The other ones are just videos.
Oh,
that's true.
Julian corrects me again.
Sorry. Except in Europe, where All Night was released.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Paul.
Paul again.
All right. So back to Animalize. Paul.
Yeah. That's when.
That's totally.
Gene was really starting to venture out at that point, and
Gene's really absent there.
Paul produced it. Well, took it over from
Michael James
Jackson, right? And Gene's songs on there were
fucking awful,
pretty lacking in quality on that one. Not his best material.
I think that was the one that Gene did totally phone in, and
yeah, there's no question.
Obviously
more than any other one, I'd say that one.
That's the one. But Burn Bitch Burn, Murder in High Heels. I mean, there's just some awful Gene tracks on there, and I don't know. It's definitely Paul Stanley. It still makes me go back to a show we had earlier, but makes you just think what that album could have been if had Vinny still been involved at that point. It could have been so much better than the piece of garbage that album turned out to be.
A ton better.
You know what? Forget that. What that album could have been if Gene was involved, let alone Vinny. Because again, he has songs in that period that are perfectly fine, and on the back cover of that one, it says associate producer Gene Simmons. That's why it says produced by Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons on Asylum, because Gene wasn't going to let himself be demoted to associate producer again.
Yeah, that wasn't going to happen again.
Regardless of the fact that he wasn't there. How much do you think he produced that album? No. That was just because he said, Paul, don't do that to me again. You embarrassed me.
He said, I don't go for that stuff.
This is Starchild. All right, lick it up.
All right.
I want to go back to Dynasty, by the way, before we call this episode quits. That's as far as back as I'm aiming on going, but
that's fine.
But lick it up.
Yeah, lick it up. I think is about a 50-50 thing at that point still, except for the fact that it was Paul Stanley's, I think, idea to go without the makeup at that time. I know he wanted to go off of it for Creatures, but Gene was reluctant, but then fell in line on Lick It Up. But I think that's still, Gene is still on, running on all cylinders from a carryover from Creatures of the Night. So, but I think it's 50-50.
I think 50-50 is good. That I think that each one of them had a lot of creative control, even though a third guy was writing the majority of the songs at the time.
The Vinnie Vincent solo album there.
Right. I mean, a third guy wrote the majority of the songs on there, but I think Gene and Paul were pretty much on the same page at that point as far as creative control, I think, too. But Julian may have a different opinion than you and I can.
Nope. I totally agree with you, but I do I might actually go 60-40 for Gene on that one, because he was the only one who got a solo right included on that album. And I just don't see him being able to do so at a time where, it was so important to have publishing and all those sorts of details, but 50-50. What's 10% amongst friends? All right, Creatures of the Night. Gene.
Yeah. And going back to what Ken said too about Paul wanting to take the makeup off and Gene being reluctant and them sticking with it, and the sound again what I said, kind of like with Revenge, I think the sound on it just sounds more like a Gene record in my opinion too than Revenge and Creatures have a lot in common as far as their sound goes, and I think it more relates to a Gene Simmons style. So I'd say for sure it's more Gene on this one.
I agree with that. Gene.
One word. Kiss Killers. Paul.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And therein lies the big difference between. They're all recorded around the same time, the Creatures track and Killers, but one you have the focus on Paul Stanley, or Paul Stanley has the focus where he's telling Michael James Jackson more about where to go with the material, and then you have Gene's material doing more with Michael James Jackson than Paul's with Creatures. So, there's a dynamic shift in that brief period of time when they're all kind of messed up after the Elder.
Yeah.
Which takes us nicely to the Elder.
Mm.
Who gets to own the Brown album?
That's Gene.
That's Gene.
And Bob Ezrin. You got to say too. Just got to throw that in there whenever Bob's involved. But it was Gene's story, right?
Right.
I think he showed it to Bob, right? And Bob kind of like took it and ran with it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this will be great.
This is great."
But so Paul Stanley went along for the ride on that one, and along with Ace and Eric. So I Gene, because this is his concept initial.
I can't decide on that one because
You're
Kidding me.
This is the one everybody's waiting to hear. You're the one that wrote a book on it.
Yeah, but after doing that, you just find out that they really didn't want to record an album. That they were desperate. They had to record an album, and that's why Bob jumped on the idea so enthusiastically as a way of forcing them to be creative to do an album. So who owns that? I mean, Gene didn't want to. Gene was doing other stuff. He was looking for ways to maybe be out of Kiss. Paul wasn't feeling creative at the time. So who should own that one? How about throw that one at Ace? Ace owns the Elder.
He would never own that.
I don't think he'll claim it.
No. They started off with the one to doing a rock album, but it didn't. Obviously it went the Elder way.
The rock album, they weren't feeling it. It felt like generic. It felt like it.
Like they did it already.
Like right? It was forced. That there was nothing new in it. So, that's why Bob. It was the only way to get them to do an album and to get market recognition, even though Bob was irrelevant to a certain extent. So I think I'll have to just cop out and agree with you on Gene.
I'm going to say the cocaine ruled the Elder.
Music from another dimension.
But I love the Elder. I got to say, I love that album.
I have no problems with it whatsoever.
When cocaine's involved, typically it ends up calling all the shots.
Yep. So maybe plant that one. Well, you can't plant it on Bill for, being an absentee landlord since he's no longer with us to defend himself or anything we say. All right. Unmasked. Paul Stanley.
Paul Stanley.
Yeah, Paul Stanley. Ever since he got that hit on the prior album of I Was Made for Loving You, I think he just fell in line and like, write some more those type hits or whatever. So yeah, which he can write very melodic and very well written songs, but he had the stronger material on the album. Even though Naked City is my favorite song on the album, but he overall he had the most material. Gene only have 2 songs, I think, or three. But really Naked City is the one that stands out for him. But Paul Stanley with Tomorrow and Easy as It Seems, and a number of other ones. He's the guy.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. The sound of that album, the songs on that album, I think Ken brings up a good point where Paul had a radio-friendly hit on Dynasty, and let's see what else I could do to have a top 40 hit, because the formula worked before.
With Shandy for Australia, even.
Sure. Yeah.
All right.
Julian?
Which, I already agreed with Paul Stanley on that one, which is the same for Dynasty.
Oh, yeah, you said it quickly.
Yeah, Dynasty's the same. You can take what we said about Unmasked and just plan it on Dynasty.
which is a shame, because, for me, Dynasty is actually Ace's, Ace's
a
moment.
carryover kind of from his solo album to a degree.
Yeah, the quality of his songs on that, particularly Save Your Love. Obviously 2000 Man.
Hard Times. I love Hard Times.
Yeah, Hard Times is just him at his best rockingness, but
Save Your Love is incredible.
Comparing Hard Times to anything Paul did on that album, you can't, because Paul's stuff sure knows something. I'm sorry, as a perfectly crafted pop song, it's just absolutely stellar. Magic Touch, not necessarily in the right key, but for my likes, is a little bit too high. But Ace's stuff, just perfection in rock.
Yeah, why did Paul Stanley? He got allowed to do the disco, song "I Was Made for Loving You." But didn't Gene write one around that same time?
Yeah, as you'll find out when you get your vault.
Because I think I remember hearing it when I was down in LA. But it's not bad. I mean, he can do it.
It's freaking awful.
Julian said he already deleted it.
I mean, it's a demo, but
it's awful. There are two.
I don't know.
There are actually 2 disco songs on the vault and by Gene, and they're just atrocious. I mean, we're not talking about Forever or Heartthrob. Forever's got a little bit of a disco-y kind of vibe going to it, but the ones that are full on disco are just, and then there's Gene being Paul Stanley on some, with kind of shandy like.
Oh. Yeah,
no, Gene needs to stick to See You Tonight and the Beatle type stuff.
That's what he's best at.
Not go to the dark side where Paul Stanley can quite happily reside, because he's got, the voice, he's got the lyrical kind of tools with which to work with. Gene, when it's forced, it doesn't work. When it's honest, one of my favorite Gene ones on the vault actually is Always Near You.
Okay.
Which obviously
original
version of it,
which I went gaga for when he performed a little bit of it on acoustic. Yeah. So all right,
I love that.
That takes us, back to Dynasty on who owned Kiss, or who kind of ruled the roost at that time. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree vehemently? Who owns Kiss? I mean, we'll have to revisit this for the rest of the albums at some point. But
rest albums, it's going to be a little bit different, I think.
Then it gets once you're through the solo
once you get into those original albums, then it's a little different.
The core, I think, is going to require a little bit more debate and another person on the panel. So let's leave that there. That's a good kind of diverse episode for today. Wherever you listen to us, chime in with your thoughts. Who ruled Kiss? What is Kiss doing in 2018? Are they kind of taking it easy as they plan out their last hurrah, and all these other bands announce their farewells? What do you think? What's going on in your mind for what Kiss is going to do over the next probably 10 to 12 months? So wherever you are, chime in. Let's hear your opinions. And if not, we thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the KissFAQ message board and discuss the topic we broadcast today. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes, Spreaker, or wherever you've listened to the show. We hope you'll join us again.